Aquarius. There are moments in life when everything seems like it ended long ago, and yet, on a very ordinary evening, an old thought quietly finds its way back. Not loud, not overwhelming, just a very subtle feeling, like a thread that was never fully cut. You keep living your life. You keep moving forward in your own way, but somewhere within you, there are things that were never fully said. Stories that paused halfway, not because they truly ended, but because both people chose silence at the same moment. And then there are days like this, when you begin to wonder, did it really close completely, or is it simply resting somewhere you've never gone back to look? No one really knows what comes next, but when something returns to your mind, sometimes it carries a reason with it. And maybe this story didn't end where you once believed it did. There are connections in life that don't leave with a complete goodbye. No final conversation to close the door. No clear moment where you can tell yourself, that's it, it's over. They simply grow quiet, like the surface of a lake after the wind passes, like a road that still exists, but one you no longer walk each day. Aquarius, you've moved forward in your own way. You didn't hold on. You didn't try to return to what has already passed. You chose to keep going, quietly, but with strength. And over time, you learned how to live without waiting. You stopped placing your emotions in someone else's hands. You rebuilt your world, piece by piece, in your own rhythm. From the outside, everything seems fine. But there are certain quiet evenings when the noise fades and everything slows down. You realize there's still a small corner of memory that never really disappeared. Not clear, not overwhelming, just still there. Like a book you've closed, but never truly finished reading. And that doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you haven't let go. It simply means some connections in life are not meant to completely disappear. They come to leave something behind. A different way of seeing love. A lesson about silence. A version of you who once loved, once hoped, once waited, in the most sincere way. Time can soften many things. Emotions that once felt intense become quieter, more distant. But time doesn't erase everything. It rearranges. It places what matters into a quieter space within you. A place you don't need to visit every day, but one you know is still there. And then, making the most ordinary moments, no special reason, no clear reminder, an old memory returns. It doesn't shake you. It doesn't pull you back. It simply makes you pause for a breath. And in that pause, you begin to see some things in life don't need a clear ending to feel complete. They just need to be understood. Not in the way your past self once saw them, but in the way your present self is finally calm enough to understand. And maybe what never fully closed wasn't the story itself. It was the way you once saw it, back when you hadn't yet realized your own worth. But now, after everything you've been through, after everything you've come to understand, you may begin to notice something different. Nothing needs to come back for you to feel whole. You don't need a return to feel complete. You only need to understand why it once existed in your life, as part of your own becoming. Lately, you may have started to notice something very subtle. Not a clear thought, not a strong emotion, just a very thin wave moving quietly through your mind, then fading before you can fully hold on to it. A name appears out of nowhere. No explanation, no specific reason. It just shows up, as if it has always been there, waiting for a quiet moment to be heard. And then, there are times when an old memory returns, right when you weren't even looking for it. A familiar scene, a glance that once felt close, a feeling that, back then, you never had the space to fully understand. Nothing overwhelming, nothing pulling you backward, just a gentle touch, like a breeze passing through an open window. And sometimes, there isn't even a clear image at all, just a very vague sense, as if someone is thinking of you in their own quiet way, not clear enough to name, not certain enough to fully believe, but not distant enough to ignore. Moments like these don't always carry a big meaning. Not every passing thought is a sign that something is about to happen, but sometimes they feel like small pieces of memory beginning to shift within you. No urgency, no disruption, just quietly returning, as if something is finding its way back to be seen again, from a different perspective, not to confuse you, not to pull you into the past, but more like a soft reminder that some connections in life don't disappear the way we once believed they would. They simply step back for a while, and waiting until you're calm enough to no longer see them through the same emotions. And maybe what matters isn't why you're thinking about them, but what within you is being touched in that moment. A sense of relief, a trace of longing, or simply a quiet peace you didn't have before. Because right there, the answer isn't in the memory. It's in how you feel it now, in the version of you that exists today. And this time, what returns is not here to repeat the old story, but to help you see it with deeper understanding, with more gentleness, and with a sense of freedom you may not have known before. And then, after all those quiet moments, after those subtle signals you almost didn't notice, there may come a moment like this. Your phone lights up, nothing unusual, just a notification like any other day. But this time, the name that appears doesn't feel ordinary, not because it's unfamiliar, but because it's deeply familiar, a kind of familiarity that once belonged to a very different version of you. And in those few brief seconds, time seems to slow down. Not in a dramatic way, just you pause, you don't rush to open it, you don't react right away, you just look. And maybe the first thing you notice isn't the message itself, it's you. You're not the same anymore. Your heart doesn't race the way it used to. There's no urgency to respond, as if everything depends on this moment. Instead, there's a quiet, steady calm. You breathe a little slower. You see things a little wider. And you understand, your value was never tied to whether this person comes back or not. Maybe there's still a bit of curiosity. Maybe an old memory gently brushes against you. Yeah, but this time, it doesn't control you. You're no longer placing all your emotions into a single message, no longer assigning too much meaning to one moment. You simply recognize it as part of a journey you've already walked. And what's interesting is, you have a choice. You can open the message from a completely different place within you, not to recover what was lost, not to return to where you once left, but simply to understand who you are now. You can reply or not. You can step into a conversation or let it pass. And whatever you choose, it no longer carries that same sense of right or wrong, because this time, you're not reacting from emptiness. You're responding from a place of wholeness, from somewhere within you that has learned how to stand steady, even when no one else is there. And maybe the most important part of that moment isn't the message itself. It's this quiet shift. You no longer need an answer to feel complete. You no longer need someone to return to confirm your worth. You're simply there, observing, listening, and allowing everything to unfold in its own natural way, as if life is offering you a small, quiet moment. Not to begin again, but to show you just how far you've already come. And when something returns in any form, a message, a conversation, or just a brief sense of connection, there's something here worth pausing for and gently asking yourself. Not every return means a new beginning. Sometimes it arrives very softly, no noise, no promises. It simply appears, like a door you once walked through, now opening again, not to invite you back inside, but to let you take one last look. The Aquarius. There may have been a time when you wanted something clearer, an answer, an explanation, an ending that made everything easier to understand. But life doesn't always move that way. Some stories pause halfway, not because they didn't matter, but because two people were simply at different points in their journey. And when something shows up again now, it doesn't always carry the meaning of starting over. Sometimes it's just a small opening to revisit what once happened, but this time as a more grounded version of yourself. Words you never said back then may now be understood differently. Emotions that once felt confusing may now feel clearer, lighter, no longer heavy. And maybe you begin to realize what you were searching for was never really the person's return. It was your own sense of completion. Completion of a feeling that once lingered. Completion of a story you didn't fully understand. Completion of a part of you that paused in that moment, not to go back, not to start again, but to gently close it, like finishing a book and finally understanding the meaning of its first pages. No more regret, no more questions, just clarity. And maybe the most beautiful part of all this isn't that someone came back. It's that you can look at the past without being pulled into it anymore. You still remember, but you're no longer stuck. You still understand, but you no longer need another explanation. And within that calm, there's a very deep kind of freedom. A freedom that doesn't come from everything being perfect, but from no longer needing it to be. And maybe that is the kind of completion you were truly searching for all along. And then, when everything is right in front of you, no longer just a memory, no longer just a feeling, but a moment that is real, right here, right now. Maybe what matters most isn't whether they show up or not. It's how you show up within that moment. Aquarius. Life doesn't always ask questions that have a clear right or wrong answer. It simply watches quietly who you choose to become when something returns. And you may begin to notice you don't react the way you used to. No more rushing to find meaning in every word. No more trying to read between the lines just to understand what someone else might be thinking. This time, you stay with yourself a little longer. You listen to your own emotions instead of letting them carry you away. And in that slowing down, there's a different kind of strength. Not control, not detachment, but clarity. You can choose to remain calm, not because you no longer feel, but because your feelings no longer control you. You can choose to stay open, without losing your own boundaries, not to prove anything, not to hold on to anything, but simply because you're willing to connect without trading away your inner peace. And sometimes, silence becomes the most complete response, not avoidance, but a conscious choice. A choice to not step into something you already know no longer aligns with who you are now. And what's different is, your choices no longer come from a place of lack. You don't need someone to return to feel worthy. You don't need an explanation to feel understood, because in this version of you, you've become a safe place for yourself. And when you stand in that space, your responses become softer, but also stronger. You're not reacting to hold on to someone. You're not reacting to keep something from leaving. You're simply responding from a place of honesty within yourself. And maybe this is the kind of growth that's hardest to see, when you're no longer pulled by what happens around you, but begin to choose how you show up in each moment. No need to be perfect. No need to meet any expectation. Just to be real with yourself. And within that truth, there's a quiet sense of peace, a feeling you may not have known before, that no matter what happens, no matter who comes or goes, you remain steady within your own world. And maybe that's the moment you finally realize you are already whole in a way no one else could ever replace. And then there are days that pass when nothing really happens. No notifications, no familiar name appearing. No clear signal from the outside. Just life continuing. Quietly, steadily, the way it always has. And somehow, it's in these nothing happens days that you begin to see everything more clearly than ever. Because now, nothing is pulling you forward. Nothing is pulling you back. It's just you, staying with yourself. And maybe you begin to realize what truly mattered was never about whether someone comes back or not. Not a message, not a conversation, but the path you've walked. In all the time they were no longer there. The days you had to stand on your own, the moments you learned how to stop waiting, the quiet choices to stay with yourself, instead of searching for answers outside of you. All of that has been shaping you in ways you may not have noticed. And maybe what never fully closed wasn't the relationship itself. It was the way you once saw it, the meaning you placed on a person, on a moment, the belief that you needed something outside of you to feel complete. But now, when you look back, everything feels different. No heaviness, no lingering ache, just a memory that has finished what it came to do. And when that understanding arrives, you begin to let go. Not because you're trying to, but because there's nothing left to hold on to. Everything leaves in its own natural way. as gently as it once came. And from that moment, whether something returns or not, it no longer has the power to control how you feel. You're no longer pulled, no longer waiting. You're simply free. A quiet kind of freedom. Not loud, not something that needs to be proven, just a deep knowing that you've come back to yourself. There are connections in life that don't need a clear ending to be complete. They were never meant to stay forever. They came to teach you something that only makes sense once you've lived through it. And when you finally understand, they complete themselves. No explanation needed, no return required. They leave behind a version of you that is more grounded, more peaceful, and more steady. And when you're ready to move forward, no longer tied to what has already passed, everything else finds its place, in its own way, at the right time, and with a quiet ease, just like the path you've already walked.